You're listening to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, and this is your weekly reminder to take up big space in life, laugh loudly, absorb new knowledge, and continue to grow and expand. What She Said is your space for the big conversations that matter and the little joys that make life sweeter. This is where empowerment meets self-care and mansplaining has no seat at the table. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's jump into it because life's too short not to embrace the good stuff while we tackle the tough stuff. My guest today is Bobbi French, a Newfoundland-born author whose two novels, The Good Women of Safe Harbour and The Brink of Something Beautiful, have become the kind of books women press into each other's hands without saying a word because the books do the talking. The Good Women of Safe Harbour was the first book I chose for the Girl Trips book club. Girl Trips is my retreat company for women over 50, and honestly, it was the easiest pick I've ever made. Bobbi writes about women's friendships the way they actually work, the ruptures and the reunions, the decades of silence sometimes, and the moment you pick right back up as if no time had passed at all. If you've lived that, and most of us have, you will recognize yourself on every page. Bobbi is a former psychiatrist who spent years in the room with children in crisis. She left medicine, moved to France, wrote a memoir about that, and eventually found her way to fiction. What has come out of her is not quiet. So she joined me to talk about her newest novel, The Brink of Something Beautiful. But this conversation goes somewhere deeper than a standard author interview. We talk about Newfoundland and the particular greatness of the women who come from there, about gender-based violence, about the rage women are carrying right now, and why Bobbi feels that writing about the sisterhood is more important than ever. I think you'll feel seen in this one. Let's hear what she said. Bobbi, it is a pleasure to have you join me today. I'm a big fan of both of your novels, but I want to sort of start at the beginning, like before you started writing, because you were a psychiatrist working with children and adolescents for years, and then you made a decision that I imagine maybe most of your colleagues thought was somewhere between brave and completely unhinged. You just kind of left medicine altogether, moved to France, wrote a memoir. So when you look back at that, do you think you knew leaving medicine, or do you think you knew then that you were leaving to be a writer, or did the writer show up when you left medicine?
I think I was leaving medicine to be a sane person, right? I don't think I thought anything beyond, this is gonna grind me into the ground. I don't know. I didn't have any set plans. The writing came about from writing this blog when we were in France, and it was just, and I called it Finding Me in France because I just wanted my friends to be able to find me and keep in touch, and it was just meant to be that, and it was just, I don't know. When I sat down and out it came, and there it was, and I can't tell you that there was any process or thought or planning. And then that just went on, and the blog became popular. And then the crowd in Newfoundland said, "Oh, you should turn this into a book." And I was like, "Okay, that's great." And so there was that. And then that kind of got put away because we came back to Canada from Europe. There was a whole bunch of things happened. And I had some big health downturns in the time. And I'm now, I don't know if you know this, I'm a person living with disabilities. And the writing then evolved out of, I need something to do with my time. So it wasn't like this grand plan. I really enjoyed it. I seemed to have a little knack for it. Then there were all these circumstances mixed in. And then fiction, well, I mean, that was just, I can't even explain that. So, like you, I imagine, I am a huge reader, always was, ever since I was a little kid. And I wrote a short story in grade 7 or 8, and they said it was terrible. So I go, I can't write fiction. I'm not good at that, right?
It's funny how those things hang on, isn't it?
Well, I think particularly for women, we do. We carry these things, these inner critics along, and never thought about it, just said, that's, and so, I'm closing books all the time. I go, God, I wish I could write a novel. And then the one thing that occurred to me was, well, girl, you haven't tried, right? Maybe if you tried, you might be able to. It's all a few fits and starts, and then here we are. And I can't. It's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. This whole transition to this writing thing, because who knew? Who knew is the thing.
Well, we never do know where life is going to take us. I think
No,
as we get older,
no,
we look back and say, "Isn't that crazy how this forked
yeah,
off into something completely different than I anticipated?" So both of your novels are set in Newfoundland. You were born in St. John's, but you've lived in Nova Scotia for years now. So does writing about Newfoundland make you feel like you're going home, or does the distance actually help you see things more clearly now?
yeah. It's an interesting question because obviously there's a nostalgic factor, because you're right. I was raised there, but haven't lived there for a number of years. Lived all different places, in Canada and Europe, and now in Nova Scotia. So nostalgia is a factor. It's a lovely homecoming doing the writing. You know, but the Newfoundland writing is a much larger thing. I don't know if we have time, but there's a bit of a story to it for me. And I think it goes back to the first time I read um, February by Lisa Moore. So there I am, reading books, gobbling any book I can find, and then along comes this. I think it's like, I want to say 2009, and here's this grand piece of literature, and recognized as such. So, the New Yorker magazine is calling it a book of the year, Booker Prize nomination, winner of Canada Reads. And no doubt it's this, I don't even know how to say it, divinely crafted meditation, on loss and love. But it's also a story about a Newfie woman in St. John's having a rough go, right?
Yeah.
And there on the page is my life, my my women, my city, my sea, my language beautifully on the page, right? And the revelation is that not only does a book like this exist, but there's some sort of global appetite for a story about a Newfoundland woman,
Mm-hmm.
a Newfoundland tragedy, her sorrows, her dreams, her hopes, her family. It really changed how I looked at books and how I looked at myself. And so fast forward to me sitting down and saying, well, I think I'll give fiction a go. I couldn't imagine writing about anything else. And so, it helps that Newfoundland has a beautiful storytelling culture, and it's a rugged glory, and all those things and people are interested in it, and the characters and the culture are really compelling, right? And that all helps, but I really think it's Lisa Moore's fault. And the the interesting thing, and if I really want to indulge myself with this because it's such a big experience for me. The full circle moment of writing about Newfoundland women for me came about when Lisa Moore unbelievably generously agreed to read the Brink of Something Beautiful and offer, those a blurb of praise.
Right.
And she sent forth to me a paragraph that it was a miracle I survived reading it, because it was so gorgeous and praiseworthy and heartfelt and wonderful. And it was quite a full circle thing. And so I feel like I was saying to someone the other day, I feel like that if I do nothing else of value in my life, that Lisa Moore thing, I'll be all right. I'm set, so it's
Well,
fine.
it's funny you mentioned her. I've actually got a question about her much later on, so we're just going to skip right to it. So,
Beautiful.
what did it mean for you to have that kind of endorsement from within the
Yeah.
literary community you grew up in?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's validating and it's encouraging, and you say, okay. But for me, it was just, well, first of all, it was immediately surreal, right? I'm reading, I have it here because I always keep it here. She's one of the lines is, I cannot think of the last time I've read such a multifaceted evocation of what it means to love with everything you've got, despite all the rest. I mean, what do you do with that? Right? So I'm sitting there out at the dining room table. I have my computer and I'm reading it. And my husband's like, what's going on? And I was like, shh, open it. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like it's because she's a heroine of mine.
Right.
I believe that anyone writing about Newfoundland women does so in her debt. And I sent her this beautiful thank you note because I was just so overwhelmed. So it's hard to describe, but it really was. a profound acceptance into this community of artists in Newfoundland. It made me feel like an artist. It made me feel like I had something to contribute to my island and my province and my legacy. This legacy of storytelling. I've only written 2 little books, but it's still something to contribute. So I think it was like a welcoming feeling, if that makes sense.
It does. You touched on it briefly. You talked about the language of Newfoundland, and there's a very specific cadence to Newfoundland speech and storytelling, and it's a rhythm that can't be faked. It doesn't translate when you try to explain it to somebody who hasn't been there. So how deliberately do you work that into your writing? Is it something you construct consciously, or does it just sort of arrive?
My whole when I first started writing, people say, well, what's your process? And the first novel, I do all these book club visits. I can't really be out in the world as much as I would like. And people say, what's your process? I'm like, I don't know. I got no process. I only have to write in one book but I realize I do have a process now because I tried to step outside it and it didn't work. And the process is that I sit down and things just flow out, right? I don't plan the book out. I don't do a big, put on the wall. And I think that's very much the voice of things, because to me, when my characters are talking, I'm just writing this conversation that I hear them in my head. It's like a flow to it. And so it's not much of it is conscious at all. And sometimes I'll write things down and I don't really understand it till I see it on the page and I go, oh, that's interesting. Right. And to me, it's just what people would say and how they would say it. And, but listening to people talk is not just a Newfoundland thing. It's also the cheat of being a psychiatrist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you get a real sense of listening for the rhythm of people's voices. And you're looking for when it dips and when it goes up to indicate sadness or fear or what have you. And so you feel, I wonder how much of a cheat it is with that too, But getting the Newfie cadence, I don't recommend. It's not for amateurs. You need to leave that to the professionals. And
absolutely,
anyone who tries to get it does so under a careful gaze of the island, right?
Well, it was interesting
and Labrador
because
as well.
as I was reading it, I was thinking, like, I was smiling the whole time at both books. Expressions and things that are said, but in my mind, I could hear how that was said. I could hear the voice saying it in a certain way, in a certain rhythm, because that is part and parcel of it. I wonder if people don't have any experience with the Newfoundland culture or language at all, if what leaps off the page for them. Have you heard any feedback on that?
Yeah, I have actually. People who are Americans, and then the book was translated into Good Women was translated into German, so there was a lot of German feedback, things like that. They more focus on the relatability of characters, the warmth, and what they give me back is what people often say about Newfoundlanders in general, right? They'll say, "Oh, they're so warm and so real, and they really tell it like it is, and they don't put any gloss on stuff," and so there's that kind of thing. So it was you get the tourism response, and then you get you nailed us from my people response. And I'm very happy to say that on both books I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about both things, because it's nerve-wracking, right, to put it out. Like for Good Women, I'm a townie and I was writing about what we call a bay woman. And so she was from a small town, and the bayman townie thing is not a small difference. It's not a small thing. Right? Blood has been spilled over it, and in the past. So you want to get that right. And one of the first book clubs I went to was a bunch of women in a small Newfoundland town, and they told me I had nailed it. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because
that's high praise. That's high praise.
It was Indeed. Really high praise. I couldn't believe, I was really, particularly from this crowd. I mean, the book clubs are hardcore, man. Like the women, these lady book clubs are really unbelievable, hardcore, insightful, and analytic. Don't let you get away with anything in a book. They love books. They're so impressive, right? Real.
So Safe Harbour is fictional, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a real town, and I did choose Safe Harbour because It was a defunct town. It was a closed town through some sort of, because God forbid I write a book about Newfoundland, about a real town, and not get it right, or
well, that was my question, was why you chose. And honestly, Newfoundland has some very unique places, names that you could have chosen to set it in. So I was just curious why you chose Safe Harbour, and you just answered it. Obviously, you didn't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, it was deliberate. I didn't want it to be distraction either, because some of our names of our towns are highly distracting. Little Heartsease and Dildo, and they're fantastic names. They're very distracting and beautiful. So I just wanted it to be sort of a stand-in for any town in Newfoundland and Labrador that we could recognize as our own. And didn't think much about it. Again, it was one of those, didn't put much thought into it beyond that, right? I learned that if you're going to write, you might maybe want to pretend that you put a lot of thought into things, but I've also learned that I can't lie about it. I can't make myself look more together than I am. So,
So I don't know if you know this, but I chose the Good Women of Safe Harbour as sort of the inaugural Girl Trip book club. So it's a company I run retreats for women over 50. Yeah. And so at every retreat, I have a book. And my focus was, a Canadian author, Canadian setting, and women are centered in the story. Your book was the easiest pick ever.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
And I wept so much in that book. I cried.
Yeah, there's a lot of crying with that one. There's so much crying.
It is intense. It's intense, but beautiful. And so did you know from the start that the friendship between Frances and Annie was the actual spine of the story, or did Frances's illness come first?
I didn't know anything about the story. I had a character. What I had was, look, the inspiration for this book and The Brink is my deep reverence for the sisterhood, right? The whole Megillah, the wit, the wisdom, the struggles, the resilience, the unique kinship is what I'm interested in. And any character I have is going to be inspired by women that I've known in my life, right? All these, are tender, funny, fierce, messy women, particularly those of Newfoundland and Labrador, because I think we can agree that they are their own cluster of greatness. Like, they just,
Indeed. Yes, they are.
So what I'm interested in is, or what I've come to know that I'm interested in is the every woman, right? These so-called ordinary, underestimated, overlooked women who are doing extraordinary things every day. And I always say this. I always say, ask any woman you meet, any woman, or any woman you know, the right questions, and she'll tell you a story worth writing down. And so, that's all I had in my head. So I had a character of Frances. I knew I wanted her to be doing something interesting. Didn't know quite what. So I started just with this little vignette of this woman. And I wanted her to be someone who was easily overlooked, like a cleaning woman who has this really important job that never gets recognized as such,
Mm-hmm.
And just getting ready, getting dressed in her room to do something special. And the whole thing just kind of rolled out as I went along. And so it turned out she was going to die in her own terms. That's interesting, right? So I get that on paper, and then it just goes from there. And I can't explain it. My husband says to me, because he's kind of gone on this writing transition with me, because well, where does it come from? He reads it, goes, so where does that come from? I said, I don't know. I wish I knew. Because the problem when you don't know is it's really hard to reproduce it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, but it would be hard for me to think about when I write about women, not writing about the kinship. And so I bet that anything I write is going to have some degree of women together in that space, right?
Well, in the book, what really struck me was sort of this, I'm going to quote Mark Kearney, this rupture in the relationship or the friendship between Frances and Annie. And I mean, it's so relatable because I think all women can sort of relate to this, how we can lose a friend and then separate years later. Come back together years later, and it's like no time has passed. So is there something specifically female to you about the way we carry that kind of rupture, sort of the pain and the grief that we carry when the friendship is not happening, and then how easily we can slide back into that relationship and let bygones be bygones?
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that all relationships between women are healed, and certainly, let's look at mothers and daughters.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
maybe that'll be your next
right?
book.
And sometimes, yeah, maybe. And sometimes relationships don't have to be healed. But I think what I ended up wanting from this the name of my own book escapes me, the Good Women book, is that there was no time that the stakes were too high. There was no time for that, lack of a better term, no time for that bullshit. Like this is too important. We meant too much to each other. And these are two women who have experienced extreme loss. One woman's lost a child, another one's lost a whole trajectory of her life and everything that was ever important to her. And coming together in that space of like, isn't it all too hard without this, that we need each other to lean on? Um, and I like that space. And I see, I mean, we all know that space either personally or someone close to us. Um, you're watching women break apart, come back together, break apart, come back together. And it's just so interesting, isn't it? The dynamic and how it shifts and what causes those shifts. And what causes ruptures and reunions. But I don't know. I think it was really important for Frances, the character, to have lived an isolated life. So, and I wanted to write about somebody who had burdens, because I think that women in the world live incredibly burdened lives, right? Even the most privileged of women, the luckiest of women, live under some level of siege or burden.
Recurring
Um,
theme here at What She Said, Bobbi. Comes out
yeah,
a lot.
and it's so funny because someone asked me the other day, well, what was the inspiration for the Brink of Something Beautiful? And I said, well, the same inspiration is the same for both books, but there's the sisterhood, and then so I said, what's pushed this particular book into the world is love and rage, right? So the love part is the sisterhood. The love part is Annie and Frances, and the love part is Maxine and Ruby and Colleen and Shannon. But there's also my white hot fury for gender-based violence, right? Like, and we look at. I'm going to veer off into something. Stop me if I go too far for you.
You can never go too far.
Okay, good. Because since the dawn of time, we've got half the population, over half the populations, of the planet, even if include girls and women, living under one siege or another, right? And here we are, here we are, 25, 26 years beyond the time of the women in the novel in the Brink, right? And yet here we sit with this ticking tally, right? Tick, tick, tick. I always say I want a chyron on every screen of the murders and the heinous assaults. And it just drives me absolutely wild. And so I think the Brink is different from the Good Women in terms of it's more of a protest, right? I'm not out in the world as a disabled person. I'm not out mixing it up. I'm not out in the streets, right? And so this is my sign of, how long must we live this way? My way of protesting this. And also, I think my way of finding and hopefully projecting some hope in all this mess. And it does relate back to Good Women as well, because I didn't sit down with a purpose. These purposes come to me after the book is written and are sometimes reflected back to me. The purpose in Good Women is about agency and just this woman having no choice in anything, no choice in her being assaulted, no choice in her having an unwanted pregnancy and the outcome of that, and no choice in who she loves and her friend leaving and then not being able to go to, being banished from her town, all these different things. And so I guess anything in the realm of the sisterhood is going to be on the page for me, right? Because when would you run out of stuff to write about? I mean,
it'd be impossible.
Reunion, yeah, and ruptures and reunions are just part of the glory of it all. They're part of the horror, and they're part of the glory, right? And but I think the biggest thing for me is that the feedback is that people, women, when I say people, I mean women, they recognize themselves in the books, in the characters. They see some element of their own life, some element of their women friends, their community of women, their kinship, right?
Through both
and
novels,
that's important
just
to me.
For me, just both novels, absolutely recurring. Like, just that's that person. Oh, I've been through that. She's been through that. I was able to sort of draw these parallels to my life and people I've known over the years through both of those books. So very, very powerful. I do want to just talk about one more thing about the Good Women of Safe Harbor before we move on. And that is that Frances is dying, obviously. And that is a very serious thing. But there was a lot of very funny moments. And I think that's really genuinely hard to pull off. So is that your, Newfie background, as you would say, coming out, or is that things you witnessed as a psychiatrist and know how to deal with? What made you be able to take something so serious, but to add in the humor and make it genuinely funny?
I didn't know it was funny till people told me, to be honest with you. I had no idea. I didn't know it was going to cause weeping, and I didn't know it was really funny. I think the answer to your question is yes, both things that you just said. So it's the Newfie thing for sure. I mean, the hardest you ever laugh is at a wake.
Yes, true.
So, right? I mean, my grandma's wake. I didn't. My beloved grandmother died, and I was working very suddenly, and I was working on call, and I couldn't get someone to cover me, and it was just a nightmare. And so I got back for the funeral, but I missed the wake. I was devastated, right? Because it was just this big hoo-ha, right? Like just. So there's a lot of that in the culture, and you got to have a sense of humor on the island. I'll speak about the island because I've never lived in Labrador, but you got to, because if you don't have a sense of humor on the island, you're going to get voted off it, right? Like it's just like you have to do that. And some of the funniest people I know are people in my own family. So there's that sort of, it's just there, right? And then as a psychiatrist, I think I mean, I suspect there was some element of wanting to have some points of levity for people as they're going along the journey with Frances. But also there's a lot of levity on difficult journeys too. Like I've watched people in the most dire situations when they're dying. I've been at a lot of deathbeds, and you see that. I'm working with kids and youth, right? And in dire circumstances. So I think it's personality, it's culture, it's work experience, but I will be perfectly honest. I didn't set out to, I don't sit there going, oh, I want to write something funny. To me, it's just what one would say, what would happen.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
A sort of death opens up the story. Ruby starts the novel on the day of her husband's funeral. She's feeling feelings are complicated for her. She's got grief and then guilt, all wrapped up into one. So that's not a comfortable place to put a character at page one. So what made you start there? I mean, because I think it's very real. I think we oftentimes don't admit openly that our feelings are complicated in situations like that. But you start there.
Yeah, I think that's, looking back on it now, when I think about creating that character, again, it started the same way. I just had this situation of this widow. I don't know why, where it comes from, it just comes. And I wasn't interested in anything that's sort of straightforward, right? I think one of my things that seems to come about my writing is that I think I do want people to feel some empathy for people that they might not otherwise feel. Right? I think women get judged so much for so deeply and so harshly for so much shit that is so not worth it, right? I mean, we expect women to grieve. Okay? Grief now, grief which is so personal, yet so universal. But we expect them to do it in, I don't know, appropriate ways or conform to our notions of grief. So, or conform to our notions of whatever. Here we have this woman, and yeah, I wanted an interesting marriage. This is an interesting guy. He's both haven and anchor. So when she was a child, he's safety. When he's an adult, he's anchor. He keeps her from doing what she wants to do. He is grief. He is loss. He is illness. He is all these things. And so it's a difficult marriage that she never wanted in the first place. Very clear about that. She never wanted to get married, right? And lust and, lust wins the day, right? And it's all, again, like Frances. Ruby is a prisoner of her circumstances, her time, the lottery of birth, where she lives. And people don't fully understand Newfoundland, until very relatively recently, that church is ruling that place with an iron fist, right? And people, if you didn't grow up in it, you don't understand it. And it was deep and thick, and it ruled every decision. And it was particularly harsh. Let's guess who it was particularly harsh on. The women,
yes.
Right? And so, yeah, I just wanted it to be an interesting setup. I wanted to write a woman who is a real woman. She's smart. She's tough. She's gooey hearted when it comes to her mother, but she's not much for loving this man. She respects him. She likes him. She really likes having sex with him, right? She gets caught up in it. She gets in it. And now that he's gone, she's not necessarily upset about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also she has some empathy. This guy's had a hard life too, right?
Right.
I mean, this guy's had a really, so what I wanted was, I guess, to present relatable people, but who are also highly complicated people, because I believe we are all highly complicated, flawed, acceptable, good people, right? Who do either bad things or get caught up in bad situations or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And so Ruby, in the book, she takes it upon herself to help Maxine, who's pregnant. She barely knows her. And you make it pretty clear in the book that Ruby's instinct to rescue someone is partly to avoid her own, reckoning. As a former psychiatrist, how much were you thinking about that pattern, the way we sometimes pour ourselves into other people's problems to avoid sitting with our own?
Yeah, it's really advisable to pick up somebody else's mess before you put away your own. It just doesn't work out that well. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're writing a book too, you have to have some level of tension. You have to have some journey that the person is going on. And certainly as a psychiatrist, I would have been thinking about that in terms of, she's caring for her mother. She's doing all these things, but she's also very unresolved and about her own, without giving too much away, issues with her own motherhood, right? And saving, right? Saving, right? She's also sort of at this weird point in her life where she has nothing to do. She doesn't know what's next. And she's sort of just grasping and jumping, and because that's what we do, right? And I think that there's so much backstory around a young pregnant woman showing up on her door. She was a young pregnant woman in distress. There were circumstances in her life where if she could have saved a child, she would have. And she still carries all this unresolved stuff. Because you know what? I believe women have a lot of unresolved stuff. You know why? Because they're too busy. They are too busy running the world, running their households, raising their kids, providing for their families, having jobs, doing all the emotional labor of every relationship that they're in. Where is the time for average women to sit down and say, I need to really look at my unresolved issues, right? She's a sandwich woman. She was caring for Joe. She was caring for her dementing mother and trying to get ahead at her job, right? This poor woman hasn't had 5 minutes for herself. And so then she's in this thing, and no wonder she's just jumping at stuff that's, what am I going to do? So I think a lot of women will see themselves in Ruby. I think particularly caring for elderly parents while caring for other people. And the interesting thing is that I don't have children myself, I've never been a mother. I have no concept of the maternal instinct. I am devoid of it. It is not present. But I really understand it. And spending your time with parents and children in distress, and you really get a grasp of what people are going through. And so I think that's it. I think it's just, I just want to write a relatable woman that people feel empathy for. I'm not interested in writing things about the girl with the tattoo on the train with the dagger at the bridal shower. I can't, I can't relate to that. And these are the stories I like to read about a lot. I don't think there's enough of these stories out there. I don't think enough.
I agree.
So
the 1990s setting in St. John's is doing a lot of work in this book, or Newfoundland's more generally. But that was a really specific moment in Newfoundland history. There was a cod moratorium, economic fragility, particular social texture. Was that period a deliberate choice, or did Ruby just sort of arrive in that era and you followed her?
No, that was the one thing about the book that was a deliberate choice. But what's so funny is every time I talk to somebody about my book, they give me something that I should have known and I didn't. I really wasn't thinking about the cod moratorium. You said that, and I'm sitting there, I want to smack myself going, yeah, you should claim that was all about that because you look really smart. I don't know. Right? God, I'd look so smart if I said, well, it was a time of, what you just said. I should have written it down.
I'll send you my questions afterwards.
Yeah, I can't do it. I'm terrible at lying. I would never be able to do it. But I did specifically choose that time. For two things. One thing, I'm a very lazy writer. I hate research. I don't want to do this. So I'm going to have a time that I know. I'm not writing about pandemic. I'm not writing out texts in my book. So I probably am never going to write a modern day book because it drives me mental. All this. And I have a nostalgia for pre-social media times.
Right.
I find them more interesting.
Well, not all of us, but I think many our age do, Bobbi. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't care if people say, oh, okay, boomer or whatever. I don't care. It was a different time and I like it. And that says, so shut up. But the big thing was for me is that there was one line in this book, and I think it's the saddest thing I've written. And people say, oh, Francis's death. And I say, no, it's this. It's when Shannon and Colleen and Ruby are sitting around, and Ruby says, well, if we're talking about this, and they're talking about a lot of women and violence and how this was a conversation between their mothers and so on. And she says, well, if we're talking about this in when we're old women, someone shoot me now. And so what I wanted was to release a book in 2026 that was set in 1999. And so we could sit back and at least say, wow, has anything changed?
Mm-hmm.
Is this situation exactly the same that's going on right now in 2026? And hell yes, the answer is hell yes, it is. So that was my little point of protest. And so that was why I chose, I took a period of 25 years. And I said, okay, well, when you write a book, it's 2 years before it comes out. So I was thinking, the book will likely be finished and I could always change the year. But 1999 is nice because you have the turn of the century in it too. And the shine, the hopeful, right? The things we hope for. And here we are in a new century as women. Oh, it's so hopeful. Is it though? And I don't mean to get too serious, but this is serious. This is where women are dying out here. When we live in a time when Uber, this rideshare service is contemplating, only because they got sued, we need an extra service for women because too many women are getting raped in our cars now. We admit that. What are we doing? I'm like, where are we at? So that's but yeah, but I want to add cod moratorium and economic instability to it as well.
So one of the concepts that comes up a lot, or the feelings, is sort of this this concept of found family in the book. So Ruby, Maxine, and Vera create something that's not tidy or conventional, but it is very real. So was that the story you set out to tell? Or did the found family emerge from these three women sort of finding each other?
I think it emerged. I mean, it's not surprising that it would emerge. That's what I can say. Is I have all these things. I have like a cache of issues and things that are important to me and things like that. So it's not surprising that these things emerge, but certainly very little thinking about it. But if we look back at my career as a psychiatrist, years and years ago, this is a long time ago now, when we were first doing assessments for transgendered youth. And this was back when nobody knew even what transgender was beyond the clinical realm. And I don't know if you noticed at the beginning of the book, there's a dedication to a woman named Nancy Wright, who taught me so many things. She's a social worker I worked with many years, and she taught me about everything I know about families. Everything. Found family, blood family, how we look at families, empathy for the dynamics of families. And what I learned from my days there is that found family is not just a warm concept, and Thanksgiving dinners that we see in, something on TV is going to be made by Dan Levy or something like that, these beautiful things in any sort of queer community. These are life-saving relationships. These are kids, for example, who didn't find their family, they're dead in the street. And so I think there can't be enough emphasis on the importance of people who, take strangers in as their own, and who shelter them and who nurture them and who protect them. And not consciously, but probably unconsciously, right? It's always in there.
Is there somebody you read that inspires you that to really dig into these stories? Have you read other stories of relationships between women that sort of pushed you in this direction or inspire you to want to go deeper into that sort of idea?
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, I tend to, certainly my vast, that's not the right word. If I think about favorite books or something like that, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a book that's not about one. I always have a list somewhere of favorite books. And I'm interested in, I'm always interested in high emotional books in terms of relationships or dynamic or journeys together. I recently read a book called Kin, which is a beautiful book about these two young Black girls in 1940s South, and going along their journey and their deep stuff going on. And so that kind of book really speaks to me. That's one I've read recently. And just, I think the plight of women is always going to be there for me. I will tell you this. I want to mention this because this is one of the most exciting things that happened in the book as well, behind the Lisa Moore. People are really into this book, The Correspondent, by Virginia Evans, who miraculously, before she became Virginia Evans at Oprah's dinner table and Jane Fonda's movie writer and all this stuff, gave me a blurb for the book. And the first word is, this book is an anthem of women. We have the same agent. That's how it happened. It's the luckiest blurb in the history of books. And the anthem of women. So anything like that I'm drawn to. And so I'm struggling to think, like my favorite writers are like, Miriam Toews or Carol Shields or Lisa Moore or Christine Higdon and Mary Lawson, all these Canadian gals who are writing about emotional worlds, right? Mm-hmm. That's not to say I don't enjoy good mystery or I don't much read about romance. I'm not a romantic person.
No, me either.
And it's not my thing. I respect it as a genre because I think it's incredibly difficult to write. And I wish I could write it because my little gentle hum books, I'm stealing that from a bookstore owner who told me my books have a gentle hum, are never going to make as much money as romance books or, be it on bestseller, the top of the bestseller list or what have you. But man, give me a couple of women doing cool shit and talking about stuff and mixing it up and going through it. I'm in. I'm pretty much in, you know?
Well, I'm going to claim my spot as your biggest fan. I loved both books. Yeah, sorry, I'm taking it. Nobody else can have it.
This is so exciting. Oh, this is so exciting.
I love both of those books. They just sucked me in, and always just sort of on the edge of tears always sort of welling up, and then laughing and smiling and feeling nostalgic. There was just so much in both of these books. They're just so beautiful. And so I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you because I want to know what's next, Bobbi.
Yeah. Oh, gee whiz. I would love to tell you I tell you, I'm going to be very honest about this. What was next was I had 125 pages of this book, and the writing was solid and the characters were solid. And, but it wasn't right. I didn't want to spend any more time with the book. And so I sent it to my agent, and she's like, nope.
Interesting.
And yeah. And so I've put it aside. And so, I was all set to write something else. And then, of course, when you're disabled, when you have disabilities, there's a phrase that I like to use. It calls the body decides. So I've had about a 4 to 5 month period of downtime of not being able to get at something. And at first I was very anxious about it because I thought, well, I got to write something. And I thought, well, if it comes, it comes, right? And so what I feel is I'll know her when I see her, right? When she comes to me, I'll know her. And so I guarantee you it'll be something like this. I don't see me writing about Montreal or New York or LA or Europe, but who knows? I don't know. I'm trying not to stress about it because I didn't have an idea for the Brink either, you know? And of the two books, I think The Brink is the better one. It's the fuller one, but I'm more biased because it's more personal for me about this violence thing. But yeah, I don't know. You tell me what's next. What do you want to hear about? What do you want a story about?
Oh my goodness, there's so much. Can we talk about the collective rage women are all feeling? That would be a good one.
Well, it's funny because The Brink came out of an idea. My initial idea was this. I wanted to write. There's a part in the book where Ruby's thinking about, well, what if I took this on, you know? What if I went around killing nasty men? That's what I wanted to write about. I wanted to write about this woman who was being hired by other women to knock men off. And I thought, well, people think I'm some sort of crazy person. They're going to think I've lost my mind. And also it edges into thriller territory. But I thought, again, wouldn't it be funny if there was this consortium of Newfie women walking around knocking off bad guys? I still might do it. And anyone out there listening, that is my idea. You can't have it. But I think rage is an interesting space right now. I've never been so rageful in my life. And I've worked in the Canadian healthcare system. So,
I agree. I have never been more angry and more disheartened for women. And maybe that's why your books touch a nerve, because your characters are so real. The emotions are raw. There's no, pretense about them. They're just real everyday women navigating life, mind you, in a different time period. But right now in 2026, yeah, it's disheartening to be at this point.
It's rough out there. And I think that, however rough people think it is, if you've not worked in the hospitals and the mental health care system, you have no idea how actually rough it is and how rough it always has been. And, I when I left psychiatry, I remember, and I hope this is okay, but to say, I just wasn't sure I could deal with one more raped child.
Right.
In the room. Right. And you go in the energy with this, and there's a beautiful lady I know who this is her life. She is a child sexual abuse specialist doctor, and she's a very special woman, and she does it, and that's her whole life. And we need these people, but we've been in the room, we've seen it up close. We know exactly what's going on every day, all the time. And then we expand that out to communities of color, to our indigenous communities. We expand it out to global communities, into places like Afghanistan where women can no longer speak. We expand it into Gaza and, into the Middle East, into, everywhere. Into South Sudan now, where there is mass rape taking place. And, like, at what point are we supposed to just not lose our minds and run through the street, rending our garments, because, and where's the women leadership? And then we have such a slide back in North America right now with this maniac in the US and all the, the big maniac and then the little maniac minions. I don't know what's going on there. And regardless of politics, no one could look at that mess down there and think we're all right, And I agree with you, because no matter what goes on in the world, the brunt of every conflict, the brunt of every economic disaster, the brunt of every political narcissist is borne by women and children. We all know this. This is fact.
Yeah. I can't decide if this has just always been the case this bad, or if we're just seeing the light shone on it, but like never before right now. It's hard to sort of make sense of in your head, because, even with this, these Epstein files, it came out, this sort of those Life Touch photos. One of the people that owned the Life Touch photos, where all the school photos are taken, had some connection to, right? I had this connection, and you think that is just wild. Like, my kids had their photos taken by this company. And so I'm probably speaking out of turn. I don't want to get sued, but it did come out. So I will say, take it with a grain of salt. You have to go investigate that a little bit. But it's that kind of insidiousness into our lives. I think that is shocking and so disturbing.
Well, the thing is too, is if you look at these two books that I've written, they're both rooted in one of the, and we say, well, you were saying, sorry, just to go back, you were saying that, well, has it always been this way? And is it just, we've got a light on it now? I think both things can be true. I mean, the Catholic Church has been engaged in the rape of children for centuries with impunity.
Yes.
And I respect people's faith. I am not going down on people's faith. Listen, that's not what I'm saying. But beside faith, and you know how I know? Because I've been in the room with the victims, right? That's my experience. I grew up in the church and I saw that happen. And I'm also dealing with the aftermath, and that's worldwide, so it's always been rough. But you're right. There seems to be a new level of rage. And I think it's because it's regressing back where we, it felt like we were making some progress for a while. And then, you see the rolling back of reproductive rights in America, for example, which is too close it's so close, right? So close it's too close for comfort. And it's just messy. And I don't know, I guess maybe people would say to me, well, why do you write about stuff that's hard like that? Because it's the reality. And because what I'm trying to find is, well, what's good about that? Well, the camaraderie is good. The support is good. Where would we be without one another? And maybe I'm writing to make sure that we don't lose that. Sure, I'm some old feminist. I'm an old lady. Now the young ladies don't want to listen to me. Well, the young ladies, though, our young women are facing a new dawn of electronic abuse, of the rise of white male supremacy. Like, that patriarchy's banging up, right? So they're not, I don't know about you. I mean, I'm much older than you, but I feel so distressed at 58 years of age that I'm not going to see it happen. It's not going to happen in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm. I think what disturbs me is that I have two daughters whose life path could potentially be worse because of all of these things. I worry constantly about what they have to deal with in the world. And so, because it was bad growing up for me. And we all had to deal with it. That doesn't go away. But it seems so amplified now, and so loud, and so dangerous. And I'm hoping it's like an extinction burst, right? Like that it's in the death throes, and that's why it's so loud and obnoxious. And that's what I hope. But part of me thinks every day I see people just no consequences, just getting away with the very worst things. And just, Donald Trump started a war because he didn't want people talking about the Epstein files. So,
Perhaps, right? Perhaps he's also just this is a bored individual who has, I can't even comment. I mean, as a psychiatrist, I can't even mention.
You more than anybody
what it
know
is
what
for
we're
me.
dealing with.
What it is for me to watch American politics. As I told you, I skipped my New York Times. It's just to the real estate section. I can't deal with it. But what I can think about, I guess, is we have to find some way to hope. We have to find some empathy. And while it's amplified, we have to talk about, showing how it was in 1999 and how it is now. Right? How women grew up with no agency, and remind the next generation that you can lose this so easily because we've lost it. We've lost gains that we had. So hang on tight, girls, right? And these are extraordinary conversations to be having now, but necessary conversations, right?
Yes.
And so I don't know. I think I got to get my head together before because I think the book that I put aside, it was too much in that. It was too much rage. It was too much that. And I couldn't see any hope in it, and I couldn't see the warmth in it. And that's what it was. It was a great book. It was good. But I couldn't feel here's the thing. I couldn't feel my own book. But I can feel Good Women, and I can feel the Brink. And to me, if I can't feel my book, and I don't want to write it. And if you can't feel my book, I don't want to put it out in the world. And I think that that's probably what I'm interested in the most is making people feel something, right? Be it rage, be it love, be it empathy, whatever, but feel something. Because, and this will sound highfalutin, and I'm not equating my books as high art, but what I'm saying is if we don't have these higher things that we do as human beings, how are we going to survive these times,
Well, I would say mission accomplished, Bobbi. Feelings felt in both of those books. and as much as I want, your next novel, I can be patient. So
you have to be patient, not because of writing, but because of the book industry. Our books sit on shelves for 2 years. This book, Brink, is something beautiful. I had to read it again because it's been so long. So you need to hope that publishing improves. And well, let's see. But at any rate, it's so wonderful that you've invited me to talk about this. It's so fun for me, and it's so exciting. And to hear that these books meant something to you is really
truly
important to me. It's important to me, and so it's such a gift to meet you and to hear that from you. And anytime you meet a writer, please do so. If it means something to you, send them an email, write a little review, leave a little review on Goodreads or Amazon or India, like all these little things to support the writers that you love, So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for spending all this time with me and really diving deep into sort of the process and what you're thinking. I really appreciate it. And absolutely, your seat is warm when you do have your next novel. So,
well, thank you so much. I really look forward to it. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to share it with someone who'd love it too. And don't forget to hit subscribe to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, on your favorite podcast app. It's the easiest way to stay connected. Want more? Sign up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com to get all the latest updates, and let's keep the conversation going on social. You can find What She Said on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find me on Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Candace Said. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Are your poor communication skills holding you back from being the leader you know you can be? The Master Communicator is a podcast that can help you improve your communication skills in just a few minutes a week. I'm David Tyler, a broadcaster and communication coach, and each week I deliver bite-sized masterclasses for busy leaders like you. Each episode is packed with practical techniques and strategies to help you navigate challenging conversations, delivering impactful messages, and inspire your team. Whether you're looking to enhance your executive presence, build a culture of trust, or simply lead with more confidence, the Master Communicator is your go-to resource. Subscribe now and start your journey to becoming the leader you were meant to be. Transform your communication skills, one episode at a time.
Hi, I'm Marianne Weisenthal, host of the LifeSpeak podcast, a show where we dive into real conversations about mental health, resilience, and navigating life's everyday challenges. Each episode, I sit down with leading experts in health, work, and wellness to unpack big topics like burnout, parenting, leadership, anxiety, and personal growth. My guests share their own stories of struggle and resilience, and together we keep it honest, relatable, and practical. Whether you're looking for fresh perspectives or just a moment to feel seen and supported, you'll find it on the LifeSpeak podcast.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.